Tatsala. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It's so great to see so many people here on a cozy, rainy day. Thank you for coming today. My name is Beth Piatot. I'm the director of the Arts Research Center. I'm going to speak very briefly to welcome everybody here. I'm very happy to see you filling your plates for the Loft Hour today. As you know, the Loft Hour is a monthly meeting where we come together, we have a bit to eat, we have a great conversation, and we have a few minutes to just have a fun conversation, a riff with some of our faculty members about their art, what they're thinking and doing right now. So the way it will go today is you can gather up your lunch and have a seat. I will introduce our moderator today, Carolyn Chen. And then Professor Chen will introduce our panel of Asma, Kazmi, and SanSan, Kwan. They will each give about a 10-minute riff on their work, what they're thinking about and doing. Then we'll return to Professor Chen to start us off on a conversation. And then we will wind up about 1 o'clock. So again, warmest welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us at the Loft Hour. We call it the Loft Hour because we have this fantastic loft space, and also because it's a time for us to elevate our thoughts and to be in community together. So first of all, I would like to introduce our moderator, Carolyn Chen. Carolyn Chen is professor of ethnic studies, co-director of the Berkeley Center for the Study of Religion, and executive director of the Asian Pacific American Religions Research Initiative. Professor Chen's research focuses on two areas: work and religion in contemporary America, and religion, race, and ethnicity, especially among Asian Americans. She is author of Getting Saved in America, Taiwanese Immigration and Religious Experience, released by Princeton in 2008, and co-editor of Sustaining Faith Traditions, Race, Ethnicity, and Religion Among Latino and Asian Americans Second Generation, which came out from NYU Press in 2012. Her new book is Work, Pray, Code: When Work Becomes Religion in Silicon Valley, out from Princeton Press in 2022. Welcome, Professor Chen. Thank you so much for serving as our moderator today.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Beth. I'm honored to be here and to be a part of this conversation with two really exciting and amazing artists here at UC Berkeley. Our first speaker is going to be Asma Kazmi. She is Associate Professor of Art of the Art Practice Department. She's a research-based artist who combines virtual and material objects to explore simultaneity, a tug of more than one time and place. Her work involves long-term engagement with cities, architecture, plants, animals, stones, and other matter to locate vestiges of relations forged by the legacies of colonialism and post-colonial contexts. Combining visual and textual detritus from Western and non-Western historical manuscripts, photographs, archival materials, fragments of locations, and mixing them with her own fabulations, Kazmi tells intertwining stories about Islam, Muslim culture, complex trade routes, global flows of people and commodities, labor, colonial, and indigenous knowledge systems, and inter-species entanglements. Kazmi's selected exhibitions include Bi-City Biennale of Urbanism Architecture in Shenzhen, China, San Francisco Art Commission Gallery, the Espacio La Raña at the University of Seville, Spain, among many other illustrious exhibitions. Kazmi is the recipient of many grants, including the Townsend Fellowship, the Hellman Fellow Fund Award, the BCNM Seed Grant, among many others. Our second speaker is Dr. SanSan Kwan, who is professor and chair of the Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance. Through research, writing, performing, and teaching, she explores how dance serves as a potent way of being in the world and a valuable lens through which to understand the world. She is interested in the mutually productive interrelationships among moving bodies, place, history, and identity. In particular, she lifts the embodied perspectives of Asian Americans and offers expertise in intercultural collaboration via corporeal practices. Dr. Kwan's recent book, Love Dances, Loss and Mourning in Intercultural Collaboration, out by Oxford University Press in 2021, is the winner of the 2022 Della Torre Bueno Award and a 2022 Isadora Duncan Dance Award. She is also author of Kinesthetic City, Dance and Movement in Chinese Urban Spaces, published by Oxford in 2013, and co-editor with Kenneth Spears of Mixing It Up, Multiracial Subjects, that was published by University of Texas Press in 2004. Dr. Kwan remains active as a professional dancer and is currently performing with Lenora Lee Dance, Ching Chi Moves, and Jen Liu. So please join me in welcoming Asma Kazmi.
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for that lovely intro. And thank you to all of you. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces. Just gonna set up real fast. Okay, so I'm gonna go kind of fast to make sure that I stick to my 10 minutes. But before I begin, I really want to thank the Arts Research Center, Beth Paetot, for inviting me, and I'm thrilled to be in conversation here with SanSan Kwan and Carolyn Chin. As Carolyn mentioned, I'm a visual artist who incorporates traditional media like painting and drawing, as well as utilizing new media technologies, including VR, augmented reality, artificial intelligence. As an artist, my process involves a promiscuous, nonlinear approach where I combine visual, textual, and material detritus from historical manuscripts, photographs, archival material, architecture, fragments of locations, and I mix them with my own critical fabulation. My art practice takes me around the United States, India, Pakistan, Europe, China, and the Middle East to make works that are legible and relevant across cultures. So the first project that I want to talk about is called Cranes and Cube. And Cranes and Cube is a recreation of the city of Mecca that portrays my ambivalence about the discernible overlaps between religiosity and the market economy that is visible in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. So I think it's important for me to locate the research for this project, which involved 2 trips to Saudi Arabia, looking at a lot of familial archives of photographs from people in my family who had performed the Hajj, but also looking at other private archives. And I spent a lot of time shooting in Jeddah, in Mecca, in Madain Saleh, which is a pre-Islamic archaeological site in Saudi Arabia. And most importantly, I performed the Hajj as a participant observer for this project. So all this was to index a large system, visually, textually, and orally, to create an immersive, virtual, liminal, and poetic VR iteration of a city. In Cranes and Cube, Mecca is a palimpsest made up of a forest of construction cranes, a black cube that represents the Kaaba. In addition, in this VR city, you see these strange surrealist monuments, which intentionally jam mismatched architectural fragments, resulting in these curious hybrid objects. These objects fall short. They're imperfect. They have glitches, and these elements are there, or I've retained that quality of the image for the viewer to critically reflect on the image. Here's another detail from the VR. Yeah, so I'm interested in inserting a viewer in my version of the exaggerated city. I want them to reflect on the power dynamics at play in the tides of reconfiguration and remaking of a city. By utilizing sound and poetic text on the wall of the gallery, I'm able to talk about social exclusion, which is visibly manifest under the shadow of the skyscrapers, where poor pilgrims and migrant laborers from Africa and South Asia reside at the margins of the city. The next project I want to talk about is called After Jahangir. This project started with the image on top, which is a self-portrait that I created for another work that I'm not going to talk about today. But I created a self-portrait holding an Indian mango in my palm in the tradition of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. So Jahangir was a Mughal emperor, India, from the 17th century, and he was a naturalist, or he was called, quote, a world Caesar. He had a collection from around the globe, which included costly gemstones, decorative weaponry, textiles, rare plants and animals. Jahangir was known to scientifically record, measure, and test his possessions. And he wrote about them in the Jahangirnama, his memoir. In his royal portraits, he was often pictured with his arm lifted up to his face, holding up a distinguished object to ruminate on. So I've been fascinated by this gesture, and it brings up a lot of questions for me. What kind of scientist so intimately poses over and over again with the object of their study? What does Jahangir see, hear, smell, taste, feel as he holds up these objects? What do these gestures reveal about Jahangir's values? So these questions led me to my photographic and drawing sculptural installation called After Jahangir. In 2021, I led a workshop for students of Habib University in Karachi. And during this workshop, we looked at a lot of Islamic Mughal miniature portraits, and we made a list of all of our personal possessions. We reperformed Jahangir's gesture to create a series of images about nature, about the built environment, about consumerism. In our portraits, we replaced Jahangir's articulation of his refined connoisseurship by our own contemporary consumption habits. We do this playfully, yet critically, and we hold up these overproduced consumer objects like plastics and electronics in our palms, as we reflect on the similarities and dissimilarities of object acquisition from different times and places. So the sculptural objects that you see are rehel, or Islamic book holders, and they show paintings that I made. Each one contains a single image of a mass-produced object surrounded by gold leaf frames. The rehel has become a strategic non-Western intervention in my recent exhibits as a mode of display that is context-sensitive and reflective of the histories the work encompasses. The rehel also intervenes in the museum by establishing a non-Western reading practice where one has to bend over, low to the ground, or sit on the floor to read a painting. So to wrap this up, I want to say that Jahangir's portraits represent an ancient, non-Western Islamic form of ecological, spatial, and material awareness. This awareness was complicated since it enabled record keeping and preservation, but it also was hierarchical, patriarchal. It was a show of power to the world. My reperforming and embodiment of Jahangir's gesture is an ecofeminist critique, an intervention, an act of reading backward Mughal dynastic projections of power. Moreover, it's an attempt to re-enchant ourselves with objects, which include everyday commodities, cultural objects, and junk. Okay, I'm going to show two more projects really quickly. This one is called Carbonivore. It's from this year, and it's a collaboration between me and the artist Jill Miller. And Carbonivore is a video sculptural installation that speculatively and playfully visualizes the invisible infrastructure of the global internet and communication technologies. So I'm going to play a quick 1-minute clip now.
This is the cabinet that houses Carbonivore. Carbonivore is not an object, but rather a speculative, fictionalized hybrid creature, a fantastical mixture of animal, plant, mineral, and machine. This strange being shows us the relentlessly physical infrastructure of the global internet and communications technologies. Carbonivore is found inside a cold, dank, metallic commercial storage locker. It was conjured by us, a creation of our dreams and imagination. Moreover, the creature was conceptualized through deep research into the resource economy behind digital technologies, and it exists to foil our belief that computation happens over clean, ethereal networks. Carbonivore is a fiendish entity created out of earthly matter like aluminum, copper, silica, arsenic, lead, lithium, tangled coaxial cables, air conditioners, computer servers, water pipes, and generators. It is a parasitic agitator, and it draws on the same carbon resources as the cloud, critically exposing the hidden aspects of computing, and it prods us to imagine different ecological possibilities for the future. Occasionally, Carbonivore brings forth young from its womb. These offerings are rare earth materials, lithium, cobalt, and silicon, and have curious surrealist forms since they remain entangled with their place of origin even when they are forcibly extracted. To witness the pure elements is to also witness the mines, quarries, wells, and evaporation ponds from which they are removed. And these younglings restage the realities of their commodification by merging with highly coveted, sleek designed products. Carbonivore's offsprings represent the world of material extraction and technological advancement, reminding us that our technologies occupy expansive spatial and temporal geographies.
Okay. So yeah, here's just an image of the monster babies, which are hybrid creatures, and they visualize the long span of materials. So we kind of think of them as ghosts that have an entanglement with their extraction site, as well as sleek, polished commodities that are made from these minerals. So for instance, cobalt, which is this one here, shows the ore itself and a cobalt mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and you see some cobalt batteries. Okay, and then I'm almost ready to wrap up, and I just want to show this performance that I did a few months ago with my best friends and collaborators at the RISD Museum in Rhode Island. And so for Ecologias Solidarias, I reunited with my best friends and collaborators to reimagine a performance that we did 20 years ago. So as we continue to live on a damaged planet, we wanted to create our own set of contemporary rituals to look closely and curiously at the ruins, while at the same time paying attention to the relationship between the three artists. So what you see here, it was an hour-long performance, a little over an hour, with 2 stations. The actions on the floor involve chiseling and excavation of architectural detritus to extract personal relics, which we had embedded in there. And on the back end was the alchemy table, where we mended the fragments and transformed them using gold leaf gilding and other purification rituals. The reparative acts and the performance are set against the ruins of imperialism, settler colonialism, and war, and they represent our desires to mend, heal, and reconstruct our material and symbolic landscapes. Okay, and I'm going to end there. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks to Lori and Beth and Lily and Amy from ARC for inviting me. It's a real pleasure, and thanks for taking your time out of your rainy, gray day. I am not going to say much. I'm just going to give you a little bit of context, and then I'm going to show you a bunch of clips from a recent piece that I premiered at the Mandavi Center at UC Davis. So the piece is called Two Doors. It was a commission from the Mandavi Center in conjunction with a UC multi-campus grant on anti-Asian violence. The piece is inspired by an incident that happened in March of 2021 in New York City, in which we can see from surveillance cameras in the lobby of a building an attack on an Asian woman outside on the sidewalk. And then we see the doorman go and close the lobby doors. So the piece that I made is really exploring the aftermath of an incident of violence, an incident of racial violence, and all of the feels that we have and all the things that we do in the aftermath of something like that. So that's all I'm going to say. I guess another context I'll give is that this is raw footage. I have not had a moment to do any edits, so I apologize that it's not great footage. It's taken from the tech booth of the theater. The sound hasn't been edited in yet either, so I'm going to try to kind of sync up some sound from a recording that I have for like the first 5 minutes for the first scene, and then we'll just go to the raw sound, so apologies in advance for that. Okay, so let me make sure I get this right. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to play sound for the first 15 seconds. You might want to turn a light down, maybe? Yeah, thanks.
first, it was a kind of flanking. Two family members on either side. Flank, verb. Guard or strengthen, as in military force, from the side. But she was still exposed. Intuitively, a third family member moved to walk in front of her. Thus, the flanking became circumscribing. Some common synonyms of circumscribe are confine, limit, and restrict. We surround her with our bodies to hide her from view. We want to keep her safe by keeping her invisible. One, trust your instincts. Two, pay attention.
1. Trust your instincts.
3,
2.
set
Pay
your
attention.
boundary.
3.
1.
Set
Trust
your
your
boundaries.
instincts. 2.
Plant your
Four.
Pay attention.
Plant your feet.
3. Set your
Five.
boundary.
5.
Make 6.
Make
Plant
eye
your feet.
contact.
Do not
5.
escalate.
Make eye contact.
Do not escalate.
6. Do not escalate.
1. Trust your instincts.
1.
2.
Trust your instincts.
Pay attention.
2.
3.
Pay attention.
Set your boundary.
3.
4.
Set your boundary.
Plant your feet. 5.
4. Plant your feet.
Make eye contact.
5.
6.
Make eye
Do
contact.
not escalate.
6. Do not escalate.
Thank you. Excited to chat with Asma and Caroline.
Well, thank you both for such rich material to think about. And honestly, I sort of feel like I need to sit a little bit longer to think about like how, the connections between the two and and the message that each of them and the experiences that, that each of them that your artwork and then the performance evokes. I wanted to let me just start with a question to both of you as artists, just about your practice and process. There's a lot of feeling in all of these in all of the projects, and I'm curious, like, if you can just talk about your artistic process. How do you begin? And I know that you're dealing with motion, you're dealing with the body, kinesthetic movement, and you're dealing with material objects and, and technology and so forth. Like, how do you begin your process?
Do I need to turn this on? Okay. Thank you for that question. I think I can answer that by saying that I often start with a question that I have about an object, an issue, an image that I may have seen. The process of making these projects is, it takes a while. And so, the prompt sort of becomes a way for me to dig and investigate. And what I feel excited about is that as a visual artist, I have access to a kind of toolbox that maybe other people in other fields don't have access to. So I can make strange juxtapositions. I can utilize humor. I can create myths and new kinds of rituals to try to get to a kind of understanding. So yeah, and often the works are happening simultaneously too. So I'm often working on more than one project at a time.
I mean, can you tell me more about the nuts and bolts? Like, are you keeping a journal? Are you writing things down? Do you have conversation partners that you're talking to, et cetera?
Yeah, I do have a lot of conversation partners. I think mainly my students are my conversation partners, for sure. And I'm in conversation with Jahangir and, with other authors and thinkers. And so I feel like poets. So yeah, I'm having conversations with a lot of different entities.
Well, so first I'll come out and just be really transparent, and that is that this is actually my first full-length piece of choreography. I'm mostly a scholar, but I have been dancing and performing really my whole life, and so I've sort of seen myself always as a kind of hybrid of scholar and artist, but this was my first opportunity to actually make my own piece. And it came really easily, actually, because there was a call out for some kind of embodied artistic expression of, the phenomenon of anti-Asian violence, and that was an easy one for me. It's something that, I've been sitting with for a long, long time, and particularly with this recent spate of heightened attacks that happened since Trump and the pandemic, it became particularly urgent. And so it really, I had an idea immediately. I thought of that first scene that you saw pretty right away, and I thought about that incident that happened in New York that I mentioned was the inspiration for that scene. And then, I was a little trepidatious about how to go about such a process. But again, as a performer, I've been in creative processes for a long, long time, for decades, and it's always collaborative. So it didn't feel so unusual to step into kind of the more artistic director position rather than the collaborator position. And Lily G, who works here at ARC, was part of the creative process and will continue to be as we remount the piece in the spring. I, of course, rely very heavily on the dancers to bring themselves and their bodies and their ideas into the studio. But of course, design collaborators are hugely important too. So the lighting, the sound, the set, of course, and the costumes are really important for creating the world. As for source material, we read some scholarship on anti-Asian violence, particularly from an abolitionist lens. And I can say more about that if necessary. And we read a lot of poetry, we did some journaling, we looked at images. We did actually a right to be anti-harassment bystander training. And so we drew from some of that. We took, one of the dancers had done some self-defense classes during the pandemic after the spate of attacks were really increasing, and so we used that as vocabulary. So yeah, lots of source material.
I feel like in both of your works there is a theme of reclaiming. Like in yours, the two doors, like here's one scene of the lobby and then reclaiming that space, right? And then with your work, Asma, like I feel like, especially in the cranes and sorry, not cranes and cubes, the second piece where people, yeah, yes. Sorry, could you after
Jahangir?
Yeah, after Jahangir, that this is also about like how do you I don't know if reclaim is the right word, but it is. It's like looking at something again in a different way, right? And I'm wondering if you could just talk about, both of you, talk about how your work does that in a way, like make us look anew at something or make us experience something differently.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, often in my work, I'm looking at things from the past, but what I'm really grappling with is the current moment, right? Which we're dealing with environmental catastrophe, we're dealing with wars and genocide, and so I'm always interested in thinking about how history and the past is sort of layered onto the present moment, and what are the similarities and what are the things that are different. So in After Jahangir, it felt important. What I was interested in embracing was this sort of new way of thinking about the material world, which had something to do with closeness and intimacy, but also it is very patriarchal, and it is about projecting a power in the Indian subcontinent over other nations. The possessions that Jahangir so beautifully had illustrated in his memoir, they're there to tell the world that that his regime is so powerful. So I'm interested in sort of thinking about, again, what can we take, and how is our current moment different from the past?
Yeah, for me, being inspired by that incident, I was really concerned because I didn't want to restage that incident, of course, that incident of violence, but I also didn't want to be overly naive about, how we could overcome it. And so what I wanted to create was that ambivalent space of what we do in the aftermath of a scene of violence, whether it's as a bystander or as someone who has suffered that violence. How do we feel? What do we do? And I wanted to leave audiences with some discomfort about that space of ambivalence.
Okay, so since I'm a religion scholar, I have to ask a religion question to both of you. And and religion is all over your work, Asma. But what I was particularly interested in was the bringing in the Muslim reading stand.
The
And-
Rahel?
Yes, and bringing in a so it's a religious object which makes you then approach whatever is in it in a sort of, there's a ritual aspect, right, to reading now. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit. If I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. I mean, it's bringing a religious object into a secular, in a museum space. And how does that change the experience? How does that kind of, how does the person who participates in that ritual, how does it hit them? How does it, I'd like to just hear you talk more about that. And then for SanSan, in your piece, so I don't know if you saw this as religious, but there was the ringing of the bell, which is very common in, for instance, in a Buddhist temple. So you're bringing in the sounds of that are the aesthetic again of a religious space, but you and I'm curious why you brought that in and what effect you wanted that to achieve.
Yeah, so some people would argue that going to a museum or an art gallery is kind of like a religious experience, right? So you enter the silent space where objects are displayed in a very particular place. Often we have very grandiose architectural spaces that make up art exhibit spaces, and so in some ways that's already present within the art viewing experience, but within my work I'm really interested in sort of breaking that and thinking about more local indigenous ways of encountering artwork. So in terms of Islamic miniature paintings, you wouldn't see them on the wall. They would be in folios, and you would look through them, almost like going through a book. And often, these paintings are made with ground pigments, and so you can see these beautiful mineral flares as you look at the image. And so again, it's this moment of intimacy with an artwork. And so I'm interested in sort of bringing that into the museum space. And sort of disrupting the wall space, and bringing in this beautiful object as a display device, but also as a sculptural piece.
Thanks for noticing the bells. They are meant to kind of tie in with actually some scenes that you didn't see, but the piece opens and closes with a kind of ritual that we created. It's a physical ritual, and it's done with house lights up and work lights up, meaning that traditionally in the theater, you create the light in the stage and then you make it dark in the audience. But we have the lights up because I want the ritual to sort of include a grounding with everybody in the audience. So we open with that kind of grounding where there's breath and movement,
and then the bells chime, and then we start the piece, and then similarly we end. The work lights come up, the house lights come up, the dancers go out further into the audience, and we enact the ritual again as a way of kind of finding a collective sense of recovery.
Oh, I love it. So interesting. We're at about time, actually. That passed by so quickly. That clock is right there, right? So thank you. I'm gonna hand the mic to you, Beth.
Thank you to our amazing panel and our moderator. Thank you so much. This is such a joy to get to have this hour together, to have the little art talk and enrichment. I do want to encourage everybody to sign up for the mailing list if you haven't, just at the door outside. Grab some of these beautiful flyers of Asma's work. Thank you so much. This is the Loft Hour for the rest of the year. We also have other events coming up through this week. Thank you all for being here, and thank you especially to our artists and to Carolyn for this incredible conversation.